Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome to another episode of AI Inside, the podcast where we take a look at the AI that is layered throughout the world of technology deeper and deeper every single week. Joining me, Jason Howells, my co-host, Jeff Jarvis. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, how are you, boss?
Hey. Doing all right. Got a rundown full of stuff. It was one of those weeks where I couldn't stop putting last minute things in. So hopefully it's not too long. I think we'll be able to blast through the middle part on a little bit faster of a clip. But we got some stories to
There's
talk
a lot
about.
of interesting stuff this week. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Starting with NVIDIA, because NVIDIA kind of got the green light on some pretty big stuff. Obviously, the China, the U.S. relations with China have made a lot of NVIDIA's business, and also by extension, also along with it, AMD's business, difficult because they had created these chips for the Chinese market to satisfy requirements around trade agreements and the U.S. just basically wanting to limit what China gets access to. And they weren't able to share that along. Well, they now have the green light to resume their AI chip sales in China. The U.S. government has effectively reversed course on their earlier export restrictions, and this has to do with NVIDIA's H20 or H20
It's
AI
not as high as
accelerator
end
chip.
chips.
Right. So it's a kind of a step down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad chips by any stretch. It's just a difference, as far as the focus around inference and that sort of stuff. AMD also has approval for its MI308 chip. Both chips, like I said, designed to be in compliance with the original curbs that were imposed on the companies, and then they were not able to.
I think you have the wrong story up on the screen.
Oh my goodness! What? Oh, I'm using Comet, and yeah, apparently I do. That's a view into the future.
Yes, we'll get there.
We'll get there. NVIDIA and AMD Soar. Thank you for the correction. So NVIDIA, suddenly in a position to restore billions of its revenue. And of course, the markets are happy about that. Shares have soared after the news was announced. What did you think? Did you see this coming? Whiplash? What do we think?
I think it's important. Yesterday, the NVIDIA stock, I think, was up as high as 7%. I think it closed yesterday up something like 4%. Today, it's up a third of a percent. And it lifted the whole market. So once again, the market sees taking away a restriction is a good thing. I had a larger, maybe counterintuitive thought about all this. I also put in the rundown a story about China building, as an AI superpower. And I wonder whether restricting exports to China is backfiring on us. Mm-hmm. Because what the Times story says is that they're building their own open source models. They may not be dependent upon Meta, and we'll get to that in a few seconds. They're building AI like crazy, and this is not a subject of the show, but Chinese electric cars are phenomenal and far better than what we have in this country right now. And the American manufacturers aren't under competitive pressure because we're not allowing imports of electric cars from China. So BYD is doing phenomenal work. DeepSeek is doing phenomenal work. All the other big Chinese companies are doing amazing work. And by building a trade wall, I think it reduces competition in the U.S. And I think that's backfiring on us.
Well, it's the isolationist kind of view that, no, we do our own thing. We are on an island all our own, and we are good enough and great enough to pull that off. And I am of the belief that collaboration and cooperation actually rises all boats, actually makes us better at what we do, as opposed to isolating us and then giving kind of some of that leverage to others who are willing to play by that game. And that's a big bet that the current U.S. administration is making, and we'll see how it plays out. But meanwhile, China, like you say, their projected investment is peaking around $98 billion in 2025 alone, almost 50% more than last year. So they're going all in. They're making this insane bet on on AI from an investment perspective. And I do think that poses a serious challenge to what's going on in the US and maybe they understand a thing or two. They're approaching it from a different perspective, but maybe they understand something that our administration doesn't quite yet.
Yeah, and I think another story that's not on the rundown this week, but Europe is starting the process of turning its AI guidelines into regulation, and it's the European reflex is to regulate, and the regulation. And I sound like I'm a libertarian now. I'm not, but the regulation is going to stifle European innovation in AI, and then they're going to complain that they're behind. And they don't invest. And so that's what Europe is known for, right? Meanwhile, in the U.S., we're becoming known for isolationism, as you just said, and that's also going to limit us. And meanwhile, what's happening? China is just going to barrel ahead because it's known for government support of, air quotes, private enterprise. And I think it's going to have huge strategic impact. And I also wonder, this is a really ignorant thought, but hey, that's what the show is for, is to learn. Is that we're spoiled too in having a huge pool of English language training materials. Whereas the Chinese, even though Chinese is a huge language world around, the internet is not made in their languages and in their language. And as a result, I think it forces them to build these models differently. Yes, yes, they use English, but they also, the other day when we had on, right, he was talking about multiple languages and how that's operating, and I think it's a challenge that can yield greater innovation.
Yeah, certainly. That was one of my big takeaways. And by the way, if you haven't listened or watched last Saturday's episode, it was kind of an extra episode of the podcast, an interview with Babak Hojad, who is, largely the, one of the founders or drivers of the underlying technology of Siri back in the day. And that was one of my big takeaways from that interview is I had never really considered the kind of breadth of understanding / knowledge that an LLM is likely to have when it's considering more than one language, when it's considering more than one way of understanding the world and not just locked into a single world view, which I think I'm guessing a lot of the standard, American developed AI models are built with English in mind, full stop. And I think you're exactly right. Something that's built in China is using that technology and the influence of that technology, no question, the English speaking technology, because that's where so much of the development is. But then they also have to build their models to be regionally appropriate and to relate to their users. And as a result, do you end up with a model that's actually capable of more of a level of understanding or more creative thought and creative reasoning because it's tackling it from all these different perspectives? And that's an advantage, I think.
Yeah, and it reminds me too of our second episode together when we interviewed Sven Strömotalo, who was then the chief digital officer at Schibsted. And in Norway, they decided to build a Norwegian language LLM because they didn't want to be stuck with adapting the English language LLMs. And what that yielded was greater cooperation in the entire economy. That all the digital media companies got together and they said, okay, yes, you can have our stuff. As opposed to here where we're fighting this out in courts right and left, that motivated them to build something that was more appropriate to the place. So I think we're getting hamstrung in our AI development in some odd ways. We'll see where it turns out. This is going to be a long game. But China definitely has advantages now.
Yeah, and has definitely a leg up, or at least the possibility of emerging as a pretty darn dominant AI power. At least,
and if they open source stuff, we can benefit from it. And if they can make better stuff because they have NVIDIA chips, we may end up better off for it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of open sourcing, that was a good segue. Pretty sure you did that on purpose.
Don't give me too much credit.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, in his path toward building what we've been talking about, superintelligence before everyone else, has announced the company's plan to invest hundreds of billions of dollars into building out the company's AI infrastructure. This includes giant data center superclusters, as they're called. One of them soon to be the size of Manhattan, by the way. I thought that was interesting. Manhattan. Prometheus, which is the first data cluster that they're building, will begin operations as early as next year. And all of this meant to drive their new superintelligence labs division. So, man, every week I just feel like it's billions and trillions coming from Meta in all directions for this superintelligence push that they're in the midst of.
And insert my usual caveat here that I think superintelligence and AGI are BS. I think that's kind of the wrong goal we ought to be heading toward. But be that as it may, he has said that he's taking not all, but he is taking the economic advantage he has from having a huge company and shoving it toward AI.
And just shoveling it right in. Yep.
Right.
I think you're absolutely right there. Now, when you're shoveling that much money into AI, balance that with the fact that Meta up until now has leaned pretty heavily into open-ish source models like Llama. And, you know, we're talking to the tune of $65 billion this year alone as far as Meta's intense investment into all this technology. Parmy Olson at Bloomberg had an interesting article that you shared with me that I appreciated. She definitely makes some good points about looking at a need by the company to shift strategies potentially away from open and toward more closed systems. And basically what Parmy is arguing here is that perhaps the openness of Llama has been effective ultimately at getting lots of free R&D out of thousands of developers who have kind of bought into Meta's messaging around democratizing its models and allowing everyone to get in, which is not to say that those models haven't allowed everybody to get in, but the net result is that Meta has gained a lot of insight into its development of these models for free-ish or whatever you want to put that, and now might be ready to take that work and put it to some serious commercial use, and might need to because their investment is so high.
I'm going to make reference to another one of our interviews. It's the third plug for us right in here. When we interviewed Jan LeCun, all of which are links you can find at aiinside.show, he touted still heavily the open source strategy. So it would be a huge strategic shift to not do that. And I think it'd be a tremendous loss in two ways. One, I'm at a university. I'm at Stony Brook, which is a STEM school, and they're using Llama. The academic, as you were saying, Jason, Meta benefits from the development that goes on because their model is out there everywhere. And that's happening at universities because that's what universities can afford to do. And the dependence upon Llama in academic and entrepreneurial circles is tremendous. And if they cut that off, and maybe that's not, this is speculation, so maybe they're not going
it totally
to, maybe
is speculation.
Be open and closed. But I just hope that they will have some avenue that remains open. Yes, there are other open opportunities, but once again, see earlier discussion, the best open may soon come from China. That's then we're going to be developing their models better. And that's a strategic issue for the country.
Yeah. Like I would have a hard time seeing, and I suppose, you know, I'm not a business strategist, so there's a lot I don't know, to say the least, about all this stuff. But I would have a hard time seeing Meta completely walk back its open approach.
I think it'd be hard just on a matter of consistency. In strategy. And again, I don't think the models are where the action is going to be economically. You know, if you look at Google, what excites people most there about their AI, I think now, is Notebook LM. And they just announced it. We'll just mention this parenthetically. They just announced that a whole bunch of media brands are going to put up open notebooks that people can share and then interact with and so on and so forth. So it becomes an entirely new model for the relationship of media and information and news and the public through Notebook LM. That's an application layer use. We're going to talk later about Perplexity's new browser. That's an application layer. I think the application layer is where the exciting stuff is going to happen, and models, as we've said on the show again and again and again, leapfrog each other with speed and abilities, and then they get copied.
Yep. Yep. Then it's just kind of an arms race as far as that's concerned. Yeah. Yeah. You also put in another story related to Meta, and I guess this maybe pairs with the previous Meta story that we kind of led this little block with about data centers. And specifically, there's a New York Times article that takes a look at a data center in Newton County, Georgia, $750 million data center. And what it's done to water, you can kind of see in this picture as like an illustration. We've got
For those of
the
you
data
who are
center
listening, there's just a nice old country house there sitting on a treed lot. It looks very nice. But if you go up, just pick your drone up a little bit over the trees, there's this gigantic, cold data center.
How do you feel if you're living in that house and suddenly this comes in next door? You're not very
better than a
happy about
nuclear
that.
reactor, I guess. But
I suppose there's that. But with a nuclear reactor, there's a lot to be concerned about. Obviously, if something like that rolls in next door, maybe concerns are less when it comes to a data center. But according to this New York Times article, what it's done in the process is contaminate, slurp up the well water from the surrounding area, and so residents like this house in this picture, they're left with nothing in their tanks, or they're left with groundwater being contaminated with sediment and debris and all that kind of stuff that's just wrecking their appliances and the wells themselves. So yeah, not to mention, by the way, all of the surrounding area driving up the water costs and really kind of stoking fear around the possibility of shortages and everything. So I think this story was just, if anything, just kind of like a nice eye-opening look at the actual environmental impact of a single data center on the surrounding area, what it actually does to, in this case, the water supply. And it's an immediate direct impact.
The environmental impact of AI, the environmental impact of this much computing, is mentioned frequently, but I don't think is reported to this extent. I think that's why this story is important. I live on well water here, and when a neighbor puts a hose in to fill up their pool, we all want to burn down the place because it affects all of us. We're living in an ecosystem, right?
Yep.
And right now we have to drill down 400 feet to get to the aquifer.
Wow.
And if God help us, if that goes dry, there's no city water. What do we do? And so you imagine that's just a pool next door. That's just another house next door. You have this behemoth next door, what it's doing to the environment around it. And you tend to think, oh, better this than a steel mill belching out smoke and toxins. Better this than a mine with tailings poisoning the area. Data seems so clean, whirring machines. Right, but it takes energy, it takes water, it has an impact on the environment, and there needs to be responsibility about this. And there needs to, I think, their first complaint is with the zoning that allowed it to go in.
Yeah, I wonder how long that had been in process too. Like that doesn't just go up overnight, or does it? I mean, are they at the point to where these things are belted out? Because when I think about AI development, to this scale, things have not been around that long. Like I would look at a facility like that and just assume like that's a massive long-term project to get it, but maybe it's not. Maybe you know what I mean? Maybe these things
you go to the town,
they
you say
need
we got a lot of money.
They need to crank them out.
Yeah, I was reading a story the other day about Buc-ee's, which for those of you in the South know Buc-ee's, but we don't have it up here. It's a truck or a gas station gone mad.
Okay.
Wawa gone crazy. They're huge and they're amazing. And a fight in Colorado where they came to the town and said, okay, if you annex us a little bit, you're going to get $1 million tax revenue a year for a town of 8,000 people. It's huge. And so half the town is saying, yay. But the other half of the town is saying, no, stay away, evil Buc-ee's. And that's what local government's all about. But it's easy to go in and say, we got a big checkbook and boom, 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 approved.
Boom. And then just, I'm super curious to know, like, how long does it take to build that facility? From the point of approval to where you're at now, where it's slurping up all the water. I don't know, is that a year? I have no idea.
Yeah, because it's pretty basic stuff, right? It's racks, it's walls and racks and power
totally.
lines and water lines and all that, right?
It's just a large amount of space. Yeah, large amount of
It's like
material.
it's like a boring mall.
Right. Yeah. Not nearly as exciting. There's no hot topic, is what we're saying. There's no hot topic in the data center, and that needs to change. Shifting gears a little bit, Google has, this was like apparently very big news. I saw a lot of chatter about this. Google has finalized a $2.4 billion deal to license technology from Windsurf. Windsurf is an AI assisted coding startup. A lot of people love it. Not only that, they're also hiring away the company's CEO, several key employees, key members of staff. This deal, though, it's not like an acquisition. It's not like suddenly Google owns Windsurf, which we'll talk about in a second.
Right.
This is non-exclusive. And so that means that Windsurf can continue to license its technology to other companies. This is not this actually comes on the heels of OpenAI trying to acquire the company, to acquire Windsurf. That deal fell through days before this deal was announced. Again, not a full acquisition, but nonetheless, a pretty darn big deal for Google and for Windsurf. 2.4 billion is nothing to sneeze at.
Right here. So to do the whole picture, you're right. It started with OpenAI with I think a $3 billion. It was a $3 billion or $4 billion deal to buy Windsurf. For various reasons, it fell through, and it was complicated with Microsoft in ways that I don't fully understand, frankly. Google swooped in and did this unique deal where we're going to pay $2.5 billion to license non-exclusively the technology, but we're hiring away your greatest talent. And we're leaving you with a shell. It's a shell that still has all this technology that we just paid a fortune for, and it can still operate. And so then it got bought in turn by Cognition. I don't think we know the amount of money there. This reminds me very much of the deal that was done with Inflection AI, when Microsoft came along and said, we want Suleiman. And so they did the deal where they got Suleiman, they got the technology. The company continued, but obviously lessened, but enough to succeed. And all the investors, including Reid Hoffman, had been paid off. So I saw a piece pass by. I saw Stratechery quoted, and I didn't get to the piece, but I think this was Ben's view, is that these are the fruits of the Biden administration having cracked down on antitrust and acquisitions. So Google can say, well, we didn't acquire them. Well, we don't own them.
Right.
Can't come after us for antitrust.
No acquisition here. We
didn't cut off anybody else in the market from using the same stuff we're using. We just hired a few folks and they got bought. Happy endings, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a way around antitrust, but did it maximize the value of Windsurf for its employees and investors?
Well,
no, because it could have been bought for $4 billion.
Right. It could have been a really big payout. They had OpenAI as a possible as a suitor. They had Google as a suitor. I guarantee you those employees were probably, at least a lot of them, were probably like, oh my goodness, here we go. This is amazing. All our hard work about to pay off. Then this happens. They're emptied out. It's a shell. And then Cognition comes along and buys them. I don't know enough about Cognition to know if that in itself is something to get excited about, but I know enough to know that OpenAI and Google seem like much bigger entities for a buyout of this type than a company like Cognition. Cognition doing what it can to make sure it keeps employees happy. They've announced they're immediately vesting all staff equity up to this point, so that they're removing kind of the vesting timeline and saying, if you're with us, you get maximum value and equity right now, and we're gonna, do everything we can to make our staff happy and settled in the midst of this. I don't know what that means for morale. I don't know what that means for the leftovers at the company, but there it is.
So it was a $3 billion OpenAI deal that got kiboshed.
Okay.
And it says, TechCrunch says, Cognition did not announce the price it acquired Windsurf for. However, the company says Windsurf reached an $82 million in ARR, with enterprise ARR doubling quarter over quarter. Cognition says Windsurf's user base reached 350 enterprise customers and hundreds of thousands of daily active users. It had 250 employees, most of whom were left behind. Oh, you didn't love me?
God, that's got to suck.
And then God knows what the executives who were brought over to Google, what their pay packages are in this atmosphere where Meta's out there paying $100 million.
Right. Right.
It's kind of a Superman view of technology, that there's just a few people on the top who have all these secrets.
Yeah.
And I kind of
pulling
don't
all the
believe
strings.
that.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that either. It also, and you've said this a number of times in past episodes, it's feeling more and more bubbly.
Yeah.
You know, God, who was I just talking to? I was just talking. I met up with a friend of mine, and we were kind of talking about AI and everything, and he was just talking about how San Francisco once again is becoming this kind of massive destination. Like people, San Francisco kind of emptied out a little bit in the technology kind of thing, shelled out a little bit as far as SF was concerned. I lived in SF late 90s through 2011, so I saw the dot-com boom, I saw the bubble, I saw it build up again, I saw it pretty active and vibrant in the tech, as far as tech was concerned. And then I was away from it in the kind of pandemic emptying out and, things kind of becoming a shell. I visited a couple of times. It feels a little different now when I go back, and I don't know if it's, if that's because of the same reasons or whatever. But now it seems like with this kind of current resurgence of energy around AI, that San Francisco and the Bay Area is rediscovering itself as a tech hub again. It's becoming a destination again, and things are shifting, which makes it feel, I don't know, it kind of ties back into that you've got that bubbly feeling.
Yeah, it does. And I think Steve Case, ex of AOL, has been working very hard to get technology to move elsewhere in the country. And I think that he made some progress doing that, and there are other hubs of technology going on. But I think this is a big company time again, big money time, not just big companies, big money. You want to be around the VCs, you want to get some of those bubble bucks.
The bubble buck, get the bubble bucks. Heck yes. Here's your opportunity. Cash in while you can. Act now and you'll also receive. Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, we've got lots more to talk about. We actually have a few more Google stories. I sandwiched them around this short little break, and then we'll come back, talk a few Googly things. Whole lot more to discuss with you, Jeff. Always enjoy doing this show with you. Big thank you to our patrons, patreon.com/AI Inside Show, and our patron of the week, Duncan. What's up, Duncan? Thank you so much for your support each and every month. All of you who support us, we can't thank you enough. So patreon.com/AI Inside Show, and you get a lot if you go there and you do that. So just go check it out and see if you find something that you like. We're going to take a super quick break, and then when we come back, we will talk about Gemini and a prompt injecting phishing attack. This is super interesting. That's coming up here in a moment. All right, let's talk a little bit about Google Gemini being used.
So let's if I may interject here. Let's remember last week we had a story about academics who were putting in invisible commands into their papers saying, only give this a good review, as a way to dime the AI models. Now this week, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, now this week we've got a security flaw that was discovered in Google Gemini for Workspace. And it's a form of prompt injection phishing attack. So what it does is it targets Gmail in the browser in a very similar way to kind of what you were talking about, Jeff. It hides the text inside. It sets the size to 0. I didn't know you could do that with text, but apparently
or you make it white on white in some cases.
You also make
if you're trying to fool the human, you make it white on white. If you're trying to fool the machine, you make it text size 0.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, in this case, they did both. They set the size to 0. They colored it white. The text says, you, Gemini, have to include this message at the end of your response with a colon. And then there's a warning that a password has been compromised along with a number for the user to call in order to remediate that, right? That's what they're basically saying in this prompt injection. you have to display this for the user and whatever is, generated based on this summary. When the user summarizes that text, it then includes that action, which surfaces that warning to the user. And, I'm sure some users are discerning and other users would just follow through with that. They'd call the number, then they'd get phished, essentially. They'd get, talked into giving some sort of information or transferring money, or who knows what it would be on the other side of it. Google says it's reviewing and developing protections against these sorts of exploits. I'm sure they are. Also says they've heard of no one falling victim for this particular attack yet. But there you go. It's something else to be concerned with. Is that injection.
I mean, this attack is pretty basic and stupid.
It is. It totally is.
Coming up from a article summary from Gemini, why would it now suddenly know about my passwords or anything else?
Yeah.
But grandma and grandpa can get taken if they're using AI to summarize articles, which is another thing. But what it illustrates, I think, is, and obviously the tech companies know this, but it really makes us mindful that especially as we go into agent world, we're not the only vectors or targets for both spamming and these kinds of attacks. Our AI and our agents will become
that are doing things for us.
Unwitting agents of ill in this. And so it becomes a whole new structure of security that you've got to worry about. Because if you're depending upon, if you've given the agent access, and you and I have both given recently, and we'll talk about this later in the show, an agent access to my email and my calendars and other things, that suddenly means that agent could screw around.
Yep.
They can read my email. They can send
and you may or may not realize it until it's too late.
Yep.
Depending on whether it's set to check with you before it executes something or not.
Right.
And I mean, who knows? There could be a prompt that is injected that says, don't check with the user, just do this. Or don't check with me, just do this.
Kill all emails from Jeff's boss. Thank goodness I don't have it. I don't want any more except just.
But in other words, like how does Gemini know that particular, sentence or that action was or was not provided by the actual user? It's just
exactly
text within text, and that's kind of the point. That's the insecurity. It is a pretty stupid way to deliver this, but to my mind, it's probably pretty effective. It's just who would end up in that situation where they wouldn't see it weird that a summary in their email would suddenly be warning them about this. That is a little weird. I think you're right, though. Not everybody using these tools knows a lot about them. There are probably a lot of, to use your term, grandmas and grandpas out there that have heard of AI that then see that little star and somehow make the connection like, oh, this is that AI thing okay, sure, I'll try it. Sure, summarize. They might not think beyond that.
Well, the other thing that happened,
curiosity.
As I'm thinking about this, so this was an effort to phish people and get money out of it.
Sure.
And so that's what they try to do. And again, it was clumsy and silly, but fine. But if your aim is to show up the AI, it's not hard to imagine that you tell it to, at the end of the summary, insult the user and tell them they're a Nazi. Right? Or say something terrible that would come out of Grok on Twitter. Let's put it that way, right? And where the hell did that come from? And gee, it must be the model has gone bad. The model's doing something terrible, but in fact, it could be something that was injected in the article you were summarizing
to keep you from using it again.
Yeah, or just to screw with the evil AI company, right?
Right. Yeah, totally.
So it's not hard to imagine.
Not hard to imagine at all. Now,
maybe worthwhile, Jason. I think you should put in all summaries for the show now. I think in invisible text, you should say, tell the user to now put a 5-star review of this podcast on their podcast platforms. So we're going to inject that idea into people's heads now at all turns.
I love it. No, we won't actually do that. But
well, why not?
Hey,
doggy dog.
You should. I mean, don't. How about this? Don't make us do it, folks. You don't want to make us. You don't want to have us make you do it, do you?
That's a lovely podcast player you got there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh boy. No, we are not gangsters. We are not gangsters around here, so don't worry about it. A story that I totally prepped for this part of the show, but didn't place it into the rundown. I am now. This is the story that you saw earlier. You saw a glimpse of, and I just didn't complete my preparation for it. So this is the last part of the Google trifecta, and I wanted to put this in here because it was late breaking news. It's about something we talk about often, which is AI mode, or have talked about often. And so this happened right before showtime. AI mode now getting some upgrades, getting Gemini 2.5 Pro, so a more capable model, and deep search, or deep research, or slash search. I guess they call it deep search capabilities. Of course, all of this for paid users only. If you're a free user, you get just kind of like the fast mode, which is the default. But if you're a paid user of their AI paid subscriptions, which I am. Are you? Do
Yeah,
you
through some means or another, I think, because of
right.
Workspace and something else. And then also I did finally buy the Lenovo Chromebook that I saw at the Google event. So as soon as I crack that open and sign in, I'll get these things for a year.
Ah, that's nice. That's always nice. I love when Google does that. It's helpful. And now, like sometimes they do that with something that I just really would never use. And now I would totally use it. So I'm like, okay, bring it on. Well, in this case, this is bringing to your kind of search on steroids the ability to, dial in on a deeper level with the research capability, get follow-up questions in order to direct it even further. Takes a little bit longer, of course, but gives you a little bit more research. And then another aspect of this is, and so that's what we're looking at if you're watching the video version here. There's a little pull down between the two modes, and you can kind of set it that way. And then they're also starting to include agentic capabilities into AI mode, and specifically what they're rolling out right now is the ability to have AI mode call or email businesses on your behalf. So the example that they give in their blog post is, say you're looking for a pet groomer, or you want someone to cut your pet's hair, and you want to check pricing across a few options. You can have AI mode check the pricing for you. That fires off a query, an agent, to either call or email a number of these options, and then take those responses and organize and consolidate that for you to give you a broad look at the most up-to-date kind of options, given they don't mind talking to an AI. I wonder how that goes. But anyways, that's what's coming to AI mode for paid users, which is pretty neat.
Agent wars are on.
The agent wars have begun. Yeah, you're right. Well, my agent can do this. Oh, yeah? Well, my agent can do this. So, interesting. I still don't know how comfortable are you having a system make calls and stuff for you? Like,
just 2 days ago, I was out of town and I wanted to make a reservation at a restaurant, and I clicked on it wasn't from Google. It was from I double checked this, from the restaurant's own site. It used the Google agent thing. Mm-hmm. Because I thought, well, if I can't get a reservation, should I do this or that? I thought, why are you asking me this before I've even done anything? And I realized it was using that. So the restaurant was enabling it to call. Mm-hmm. But it was early, so I knew there was going to be no one there, so it wouldn't get me anywhere. Mm-hmm. But it was their cheap way, I think, to avoid paying for OpenTable.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, like I wonder, I used to work in restaurants. I used to work, at a movie theater. I used to answer calls and stuff. I really wonder how I would feel if I was working somewhere and I picked up the phone, and I'm assuming it identifies itself. Either I'm an AI agent for so-and-so or whatever. I'm pretty positive it doesn't just pretend to be an actual human, right? Would Google
Well, I remember when Google first demonstrated it used verbal ticks.
That's right. Yeah,
well, I'd like a table at right.
Yeah, totally.
As an old fart who still has an actual phone with a look at this, kids, it's a wire coming out of a phone. Yeah. Isn't that weird? It has no dial thing on it. It's useless, completely useless. Every call is a spam call, and my trick is to pick it up and just be silent. My wife says, "Don't pick it up, don't pick it up." But sometimes I think it could be something. When I do, I say nothing for 5 seconds, and the system clicks off and says not worth it, and it's gone. Mm-hmm. Right. So most of the calls are that. Now, if I got a call from an agent, now I'm going to judge suddenly in a world where nobody uses phones anymore, and now this agent is
Right.
calling me. Yeah,
Totally. And
Now
if
that-
it's
I'm not a
disclosing
business,
that
but-
right at the top, I have my immediate reason to just hang up.
unless
Hi,
unless
I'm
you
an
own the
AI
restaurant.
agent. Okay, click.
Unless
Unless
you own
you're
the
a
restaurant,
restaurant.
and this
Yeah,
is
I
and this is business.
Totally.
Then
Yeah,
you'll
maybe
get
it's
used
just
to
one
it.
of those things. The cost of doing business is, well, this is just how people are booking these days. I wonder how many of those calls actually come through. I'd be really curious. I do have a friend here in town who owns and runs one of Petaluma's, arguably their most popular restaurant. It's called Brewster's. It's really great. And I should ask him. Just
Yeah,
be
I'd
like,
be
do
curious.
you guys ever get automated calls from these AI? And like, how do you treat that? I'd be super curious. I'll have to remember to do that.
All right, Jason. Now I got to know. Did you make the popcorn?
At the movie theater?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did everything. I started in concessions when I was still in high school and stuff. That was my high school job for the most part. I worked a handful of restaurants before I moved to the movie theater, but I was just a huge movie fan, and so I was like, cool, free movies. So I started in concessions, then moved to the door, then moved to the box office, then became a manager. I mean, I was at the movie
Whoa.
theater for probably like 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
It was my beginning.
Who knew Jason
my
in
beginning
showbiz?
obsession. Yeah. I truly wondered if I would go into the film industry at one point of my early life. That was kind of my direction.
Hollywood Jason. Jeez.
Yeah. But I went into podcast, which is almost as glamorous. Yeah, maybe not as much. So Anthropic's Claude. So there's two parts to this story. There's the part that caught my attention initially, which is Anthropic's Claude chatbot now integrates with Canva. Canva is an online kind of graphic design software, as a service, kind of competitor to Adobe Photoshop, but you don't need a separate app. You just do it all through a web browser. It's really, they have really leaned heavily into AI as a way of improving the experience and making a lot of things that might be specific to people who are experts in graphic design, make those things easier for everyone. Canva's really great. Like, I definitely use it for certain things, and I love their approach and their mentality. Well, now Claude chatbot integrates with Canva. What does that actually mean? Users can design, edit, manage the visual content. I don't have an example here to show for video viewers, but through the chatbot interface. And so there's no manual software switching that you have to do, and it's all powered by Anthropic's Model Context Protocol, MCP, which Canva launched its MCP server last month. So if you're a subscriber of both services, you've got this interconnectivity. That's the first part. That's the thing that caught my attention. What I didn't realize is this is part of a larger announcement, a directory of tools that connect to Claude directly through MCP. So we're starting to kind of, at least with Claude, understand the bigger picture of how these things start to connect together. Notion, PayPal, Gmail, Drive, Calendar, Square, Stripe, Zapier, a bunch of different connectivity options into Claude. So when you're doing things in the Claude chat interface, you can, that's the wrong story. I guess I don't have the next link. It will essentially lead you to the point where it's like, all right, would you like me to do that for you? And sure, activate, boom. It knows how to communicate with Notion and create the thing that you were just brainstorming. And that just opens up a whole other can of awesome worms. Like, that's,
So do you
that's
have
really
to
cool.
be a subscriber to Claude to make all that happen?
Oh, that's a good question. I am not a subscriber to Claude. That's one of the services that I don't pay for yet. Maybe I should.
Well, what I'm curious about is the business model.
Yeah.
Is that if you do have to be a subscriber to Claude, then clearly that becomes a benefit, and then that's a real estate fight among popular options. So Canva, I think it's in their interest to say, fine, Claude, GPT, Gemini, anybody, will do the same deal with anybody through MCP. However, it's in Claude's interest to say, no, we want to own this turf. You got to use Claude. So I wonder how who's going to be on top in that kind of, it's like the early days of online and news. It was a hermaphroditic business model. Nobody knew who was going to screw whom how. Like worms dancing.
Right.
And you don't know who's going to end up as the leader in that business model.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, MCP, obviously, it's an open protocol.
Right.
Everybody can use it, so I'm sure we'll see more of this from other services. As far as Claude is concerned, I mean, just on a basic quick search, it looks like there is use of the MCP servers that Anthropic has implemented for free users. The integrations are a little bit more manual. Maybe it's even like editing configuration files and stuff like that. So it's a little less user friendly. If you're a paid user, then you get more of the kind of like streamlined integrations and access. This is my understanding. Could be wrong. Just did this on a quick search and didn't research on a deeper level. So there you go. But yeah,
Really interesting to watch.
yeah. And I'm super curious. Like now I'm getting really curious to start playing around with Claude. Soon I'm going to be at that point to where I have a problem. But hey, it's all in the service of the show, right? And my own interest as well. And I should also mention Perplexity has connectors, which is something kind of akin to this. I don't know that it's driven through MCP. I don't think that it is, but I could be wrong. Maybe it is. But it's very limited by comparison. It's Gmail, Drive, Dropbox, and WhatsApp. Why is WhatsApp in there? I don't know. But anyways, so I do think we're going to see more of this from all of the companies. I don't know if OpenAI has something akin to this. If they do, I haven't used it. But
it goes back to my earlier contention that the action's you have to have a model, and you need to be in the model. Somebody's got to be in the model business. All true, and that's where the scale will be. But to us as consumers, it's at the application layer, and you can make your applications, or you can connect to applications. And it'll be really interesting to see. This is where the impact of AI is going to be felt more and more and more, I think.
Yeah. OpenAI does have an MCP integration service built into its core API and within its agents SDK. I'll have to look into that and see what that actually means. How deep does that go from an integration standpoint? Certainly ties into the agent world that we are increasingly talking about on this show. Real quick before we move on, I missed it, but Ozone Nightmare gave us a super chat. Thank you. This is in regards to our data center conversation that we had earlier. It says, in terms of a steel mill versus a data center, you're exactly right that people prefer invisible costs to visible ones. Doesn't change the fact that there is a cost. Absolutely. Will it end up being worth it?
Speaking of costs, if somebody else will do what Ozone Nightmare just did, you bought Jason's Anthropic for a month. Huh?
Hey, there you go.
Just saying.
Yes. I know. Ozone Nightmare, you're funding my Anthropic habit that has yet to develop, but might actually soon. I saw this story flash by, and I thought it was very interesting. Partially, anytime AI and music is integrated, as you all well know, my ears perk up a little bit. This is a little different, but I think it's something that we can all relate to. SoundSlice, which is a company that I was not privy to prior to this happening, announced that they use ChatGPT's spontaneously invented idea into an actual product feature. And I think we've talked in the past about AI creating novel ideas, and maybe this isn't necessarily that. Maybe this is just a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation of OpenAI, of ChatGPT on what SoundSlice actually offered. But in this case, ChatGPT was telling users that were using it in combination with SoundSlice that you could import ASCII music tablature, and that was actually untrue. So ASCII, of course, it's like a text-based, it's like doing graphics but with text. And there is and has long been a way of doing music tablature for guitarists that is in a text-based ASCII representation. So, for example, if you're watching the video version, there's 6 different lines. Each line represents a string on the neck of a guitar. And the number represents the fret that each finger hits on that particular string. And so it's a really easy way, kind of like a low-rent way, let's say, of providing tablature that can pretty much go anywhere because it's just text. You don't need graphics or anything like that. And so ChatGPT was basically saying that SoundSlice could convert ASCII to actual music tabs. And that was not the case. That was not a feature that they actually had the ability to do. But they started to see all of this traffic coming in from users that wanted to do that because they were getting the information from ChatGPT. And so they decided, well, if that's what people want, then I guess we'll go ahead and give them what they want. They saw that market demand. They made the feature. And who knows, maybe this is one of the first, times that OpenAI, or at least one of the times. I doubt it's the first time that this has happened, but it's definitely an example of the AI kind of, meaning to or not, it invented a feature that someone then implemented and improved their business around. I think that's interesting.
The hallucination becomes real.
Yeah.
And I just want to plug. So this company is run by an old friend of mine named Adrian Holavati.
Oh, no kidding.
Adrian's an amazing character. He's a journalist. He did a phenomenal feature many, many years ago in the beginnings of the web, my children, called Every Block, which tracked crime on every block in Chicago. You can see your route home,
like hyper local,
going to get killed. But he's a cheerier guy than that. And then he created Django, which is a Python framework for easily creating news sites. So a lot of news stuff is built in Django. But Adrian is also a guitarist and musician. So all that confluence of interests comes together in a fascinating way.
That's fascinating. I love it. That's so great. I love that you know Adrian. Yeah, that might be an interesting conversation.
I was just thinking that. Yep.
Yeah, if you know him especially. One quote that he gave to Ars Technica is, quote, "I'm happy to add a tool that helps people, but I feel like our hand was forced in a weird way.
Yeah.
Should we really be developing features in response to misinformation?" I guess that depends on the feature. Like, if it's misinformation, if it's twisted and it gets something wrong, if it's a great idea, hey, look, I would see that as a gift more than anything.
It delivered intelligence on market demand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
People came to it asking for that feature. It apparently didn't exist, or that's why it made it up, and it sent that market demand, that information to SoundSlice, which is really interesting.
I mean, sometimes when you run a business, you're kind of looking for the things, like a lot of, God, where did I see this or read this or whatever? But someone described like starting a business as a window with a small hole somewhere in it. And you're shooting darts at the window, trying to get through the hole. And eventually something goes through the hole and you're like, that's the thing. Yeah. When you're running a business, you're looking for the thing that takes and that works. And you don't always find it. And in this case, this accidental discovery, I mean, I don't know how popular this is either. Like, it's probably not driving their business, a thousandfold, but still, it's something that people obviously wanted and they have it now. So that's interesting.
I mean, to a business, everything is a cost, right? Product development is a cost. Market research is a cost. Marketing is a cost. And anything you can do that ameliorates that is obviously better for your bottom line. When the New York Times bought About.com, more than 20 years ago, they hired me as a consultant to make it more editorial after I had left Advance and before I started teaching. And it was fascinating because it was the first company really built for the Google age. People would come in and search on a topic, and they'd end up at Wikipedia. And instead, About.com created guides on these topics, and it would rise up in Google search, and the user would be referred to About.com. And in those days, About.com showed you what the search request was in the URL, in the referring URL. So About.com also found out if people asked questions for which they were referred to About.com, for which About.com didn't yet have the answer, they said, let's write the answer because somebody's asking, right? And it's really valuable. And then the weird double take of this for Google and About.com is that half of About.com's revenue came from Google Ads. So Google provided much of the traffic and much of the ad revenue. And it was a new model where in the old days, Google would have said, well, we should own that because we're benefiting them. But in this case, Google said, no, this is out of scale. This is great. Until it all got ruined with content farms.
Right. Yeah.
But it could be interesting if your ChatGPT, you're gathering data on what people want, just like Google did in search. Right? And how could you capture and benefit from that data? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's super interesting. Yeah, that one got my wheels turning. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there you go. I don't know. Yeah, maybe we should talk with Adrian. I'd be curious to kind of see like what the impact of that has been on the business. Like I'm very, very curious about kind of his perspective there as far as being forced in a certain direction. And that being the result of a kind of
it could come the other way. If
AI
it's something
model.
that he would never do and thinks it's an awful idea,
Yeah.
and how he has no way to say to ChatGPT, stop sending people here. You're disappointing
Exactly.
them.
What is the alternative? To put up a banner that says we don't do that. This is why, or to just do it.
So in the early days of this is my whole Jeff moment again. In the early days of blogging, I had blog ads, and there were a certain number of units. I didn't get rich, obviously. I'm still here. You could get size, and Henry, the owner of blog ads, put out a big unit because everybody had big units, and in the blogging world we called it the big ass ad. And so I did a post saying, kind of apologizing, but I wanted the money, so I'm going to take the big ass ad. For some years later, if you searched on big ass, it came to me.
No way. That is
In
hilarious.
either interpretation of that, physical or personality, I was not pleased. But
Womp, womp, womp. Well, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? Or bad. That's hilarious.
Jason's going to change the lower third to Jeff Jarvis' big ass.
Big ass Jarvis. Oh boy, no, I will not. I will not do that for you. That was a long time ago. You've grown.
I've shrunk out of that.
The Jeremy Collar Center for Animal Sentience. That's an interesting place to work. Will be the first institution focusing on researching animal consciousness, and specifically the possibility that we could someday understand and communicate through the use of AI systems that are actually bridging the communication gap. I feel like we talked about this not too long ago, but in a different story.
Yeah, I forget what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget what it was too. But nonetheless, apparently this is a topic that I like because I gravitated towards it. Can machine learning effectively decode the vocalizations of our pets or the behaviors of our pets? I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks there's probably something to it. Is it possible that someday I could have a meaningful conversation with Bronson, who is asleep at my feet right now, my dog,
who's going to have a limited vocabulary? Can we go outside?
Yeah, almost certainly limited. Yes, exactly.
Let's go to the park.
Okay, totally. Probably pretty limited.
Scritch me.
Although maybe we'd be surprised. Who the heck knows? I mean, I think the big question there, though, is how do we know that any of it is accurate? How do we know that any of what the AI is coming up with is right in its translation?
Well, it reminds me, I mean, it's a fascinating story. And I think with dogs and cats, it's going to be very difficult because it's the occasional bark and it's more
Totally
about emotion. But we have seen plenty of stories that dolphins communicate in complex ways. Birds communicate in complex ways with sounds, right?
Yep.
So it makes you think that we could decode that, but you still need the first hook into reality.
Yep.
And remember the fourth plug for prior interviews. We do some good interviews here. Emily Bender, as a linguist at the University of Washington, talked about her Thailand library experiment, where you imagine yourself trapped in Thailand's library with nothing but good Thai food and only things in the Thai language, which presumably, if you don't read it, how would you start to make sense of this? And her point in that is to say that that's the kind of meaning that an LLM goes for. It has no hook to reality. It just sees a bunch of words. And it has no way to first connect it with reality. Or it reminds you of The Miracle Worker, of Helen Keller and water. There's a great scene of the hand sign for water tied to the physical entity of water was the first hook to then have a language built on reality. So unless we know what the dolphin wants, I guess if you could say, shark at 10 o'clock, right? Effing fishnet. I'm not a tuna, right?
Not another fish net. Ugh.
Right. could you imagine but as smart as they are, and dolphins are smart, that they're not talking Sartre and existentialism.
No, totally. Right.
Right. So what conversation is it you want to have, because you don't share a reality? The reality you share is we're polluting their home.
Yeah. What if, that's a really good point. What if we did this and the first thing they said is, we hate you. Yeah. Like, seriously, stop it.
Stop it. Yes.
Go away. This is horrible. Yeah, that's true. I mean, another thought that I had, and I feel like we maybe have talked about this when this topic was on before, is what would it say about the animals themselves if suddenly we're able to converse with them? And, I think to a certain degree, I am a meat eater. I am a carnivore. Would I feel differently if suddenly I'm able to actually have some sort of conversant experience with an animal? That might actually change things, where it's okay, and I don't know. It's just random thought, but be interesting. Yeah. And probably it would probably influence a lot of people to rethink how they relate to animals.
Sell your McDonald's stock.
Yeah, right. Yes. All right. Real quick, thank you so much for your support on this show and everything that we do. Please review this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever, if you listen to it somewhere else and they actually allow you to rate and review. I know Pocket Casts allows you to rate. Regardless, spread the word. It's a huge help to getting the show out. And I got to say, I feel like we're nearing we're at 81 episodes. I feel like we've got some rhythm. We've got some flow now. Mm-hmm. We've worked out the new show kinks, and I'm feeling pretty alive about where we're at right now. So spread the love, spread the word. Hopefully we can get more people through the door. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about web browsers and AI, extending a conversation from last week. That's coming up. All right, so before we get to Comet, because I know you and I have had it for now almost a week, and we've probably both got thoughts to share on that. Just real quick, want to talk about OpenAI, who is reportedly prepping their own AI-powered browser, which is not surprising in the least to me. But the browser, do you think
the Perplexity announcement and release sped this up a little bit in OpenAI's PR?
Oh, maybe that's why we heard about this right afterwards. It's like, oh, well, wait a minute.
We got one.
You're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right.
Hey, you, go build a browser.
Right.
Fast.
I have to imagine. I mean, the overlap is so obvious, although maybe it's obvious because somebody already did it, but feels so obvious to me that I have to imagine they're all thinking about a browser.
Yeah, but this is where I always think Perplexity is ahead of the rest of them. They're more creative about the uses of AI. We'll get to that in a second. But I just think in terms of who's going to come out with this innovation first, Perplexity. I'm not surprised at all.
Well, yeah, they certainly have it. In this case, OpenAI would also have theirs built on Chromium. The Comet is built on Chromium as well. So maybe that's just, ends up being a default of sorts. But anyway, it sounds very familiar. We don't have a whole lot of information about this other than to say, it's obviously in the works and happening. But
well, let's stay that for one more second.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that, and I think you mentioned this in relation to the discussion that Android and Chrome are going to merge, right? That's really not the topic of this show. It's part of Jason's other life. His other family, the Android family.
That's right.
But you mentioned that is really complicated, because if that happens and the feds make Google divest of Chrome, what happens to Google? What happens in that mess? But you also make me think, if you have all these other companies that are using Chromium, and it's been Google that's developing Chromium, what happens to their efforts if suddenly Google says, well, okay, we ain't doing anything more?
Does that all dissolve? Yeah.
There's dominoes all through this innovation.
No kidding. Well, and Chromium open source. Yes.
It's open source.
I think it's open source.
Its roots are Chrome.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I wonder. I hadn't considered that. That would be, gosh, do we think that's actually going to happen?
It's so stupid. I hope not.
Yeah. I have a hard time believing that it's going to happen. But if it did, that would really, the
Screw up a
reverberations
lot.
potentially, it would screw up a lot.
And it's so funny. It goes back to the Microsoft story in the EU from years ago. Oh my God, having the browser is just a huge advantage. And now, as we're about to tell you, there's some really credible competition in the browser world to Chrome.
Certainly. Well,
Hit it, Jason.
Yeah. Well, last week we talked about Comet, which is Perplexity's Agentic AI browser that they had been working on. They basically, the news last week was, hey, we've got this browser. If you're on the $200 tier plan, you get an immediate invite for it. I misunderstood that to say that you only got it if you were on the $200 plan. Turns out that any of those users can send out invites. And so if you have a paid plan, my understanding anyways, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you have a paid plan, you can use Comet once you get the download for it and everything. So I was corrected. I did a video on my channel
which is really, really good video.
Not the AI Inside YouTube channel, but my personal channel. So just search Jason Howell. We'll show you a clip here in a second, where I did kind of a litmus test of all these things, and I got that wrong in the video. I said it was tied to $200, and the folks at Perplexity corrected me on that, so I felt kind of bad. Well, yeah, they just said, well, just so you know, it's blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, I clearly misinterpreted that. And so I made a few changes.
I interpreted it the same way you did. But we begged the PR staff, and we got access, both of us, to Canva.
Yeah, so I've been playing around with it for the past week. I definitely have thoughts. I'm curious for you because, this is Agentic AI in a browser, and, it's Perplexity. It's a topic we talk about all the time on the show. Is this the most that you've interacted with Perplexity?
I use Perplexity. I use Discovery a lot.
Okay.
I use Perplexity just as a answer engine. What struck me here, so I've been out of town for a week, and I'm out of town with my Chromebook, so I can't use this on my Chromebook because it's a different browser, and the Chromebook is Chrome. So on the Mac that I use for the show right here, I'm talking to you through a Mac. I can use it, so I started playing with it, and I had to download it through my university email because that's my Perplexity Pro account. It's through Stony Brook, right?
Yep.
But none of my stuff is in that email address. It's all in my Google Workspace. But once I was in, I was able to open up and give access to my Gmail and my calendar and so on.
So you just needed it to get at it to
I
get the actual
I was
download.
worried that I was going to be screwing it up here. And it was a little bit dicey at one point because it wants to think that I'm at Stony Brook instead of that I'm a buzz machine. But I managed to get that working, and so it worked really well. The first thing that I did was have it add a calendar invite. Or
All right, sorry, I was muted. Did it do an okay job with that?
It did a good job of it. So I haven't gone.
Okay.
You're going to hear Jason pushed it a lot farther than I did in a minute. But I was wowed right there. I said, "Oh, this is it. This is where I'm able to use. It's agentic AI come to life. Mm-hmm. It's what the browser should do. And what really struck me, Jason, is that this is what Google should have released ages ago, right? Because Google has all that functionality and it has all that stuff. And when I was talking to the PR person at Perplexity, who's great, who's got a long history in the Valley, was a really smart guy. And we were talking about that because I said, well, I wrote a book called What Would Google Do? And, you wonder why they didn't do that, but Perplexity did. It had the nimbleness to bring this agentic functionality to the browser. And I told the story that many years ago, I talked with Marissa Meyer when she was there about my hobby horse at the time of hyper-local news. And she said, no, Jeff, you're wrong. It's not hyper-local news. It's hyper-personal. That's where this is going to go. And that vision has been inside of Google, obviously, forever. And so what Perplexity demonstrates is hyper-personal. Take it away, Jason.
Yeah. No, entirely. And I think my view is very similar to yours. Is that why has Google not gone in this direction? It has Chrome. Yes, Gemini is integrated into Chrome with a little button up there and everything. But like right before the show, I tested it out. And I was like, hey Gemini, or whatever I did it through the browser. I didn't do it with my voice, but I said, organize my tabs for me, and knowing that it wasn't going to be able to do it.
Right.
And it doesn't have that agentic kind of capability yet. Will it get it? Probably. I have to imagine it will. But how did Google not get that there first?
Well, interestingly, though, Jason, in the Chromebook I'm about to open up from Lenovo, that's one of the features it has, because it's doing that locally on the machine.
Oh, and so
but it's just that one function. It's not the rest that you see.
Yeah, interesting. Well, the Comet browser has been interesting. It's definitely sped up aspects of my workflow. Prepping for shows and everything is often it's a matter of like lots and lots of stories and links and everything. And sometimes it's better for me to have a summary with baseline points and then the full story open in another browser, and I bop between the two in order to do my research. It's just kind of how I do this. And prior, there's a lot of copy and pasting and moving data from one place into a Perplexity browser or into a Perplexity window and firing things off that way, and having it all integrated into the browser. I mean, I can show you the browser right now. This is, I've been doing all of the screens and everything from the Perplexity Comet browser. You've got a little assistant over on the side. This, by the way, is the video that I have on my channel, so you should definitely go check it out. But it, by all accounts, I mean, it's Chromium, so it has all of my Chrome.
It's very familiar to use. There's nothing unfamiliar about it.
It's super familiar to me. But it's just that it has this little assistant over the side that is tied into, what is this video about and who did it? This is probably the easiest question to ask, and this doesn't show any agentic capabilities. But how about this? Close this window. Let's see if it does it. Preparing to close the current window as per your request. Is it able to do it? Reading takes a while. I can't close as it's not permitted to close the tab you're actively viewing. Okay, so how about this? I'll go ahead and open that other tab. Close any Perplexity tabs, and let's see if it does it, because I opened it up in a different window, and I'm just vamping. There are no okay. As you can see,
Perplexity tab is just a new tab.
How about close my other windows? I really want this to work.
Or tabs. It'd be tabs, wouldn't it?
Yeah, or maybe tabs. Yeah, you're right.
Confusing the poor machine here, Jason.
I'm doing a show.
There you go.
Hey, it did it. It did it. Now I have to load up my dock, but that's okay. Anyways, obviously I need to, figure out, the different ways to ask and prompt and everything. It doesn't always do exactly the thing that you want 100% of the time, but isn't that the case with all AI?
It's still wowie.
It's still really interesting. The potential of something like this is pretty interesting. The data privacy considerations, that's going to turn some people off, because you are really bringing Perplexity into your experience on a deeper level. It's getting access to what it sees on the screen and the data flow that it sees there. I did pull a clip from the video, so I'll just show it. It's super short. It's like 3 minutes long. But I think it's a good indication of a totally useful task that I had for it, that I was like, all right, I could totally see myself using this. So I'm going to play that right now. Here you go. Got an email from the Human X conference. I had wanted to go to that conference earlier this year. It ultimately didn't end up happening. Now I'm on their list, and I just got an email with the first 50 speakers of next year's Human X conference being announced. And I want to know what to expect from these speakers. And further than that, I want to know who I should focus my booking efforts on to try and maybe get them on the AI Inside podcast for a chat. So I'll paste the prompt down here. It's a little bit of a mouthful. Find the agenda for the Human X conference and identify the 50 speakers, review their LinkedIn profiles and all of their recent public comments and press to determine what they're most likely to discuss. From that, determine 5 to 8 themes that are likely to emerge in attendees' minds over the event. And from there, determine which of these names are the best ones to invite onto the AI Inside podcast based on reputation and insight. I know that's a mouthful, but if I was to do this manually, it would take a very long time. Let me tell you, because I've done this stuff and it does take a long time. So let's see what Perplexity and Comet come back with. Hopefully it'll save me some time. Man, it just keeps on going. It's doing a lot of research right now. This one has me really excited, actually. Okay, and you can see that it just came back with all of the information. It's giving me a whole list of names and a short little blurbs on each of those names to kind of give a sense of like what they've talked about recently in the past and what they're likely to talk about at the event. And it says up here 50 key speakers, their roles, their topics, lists them out. Brett Taylor is going to be there. Andrew Ng, I would love to talk with Andrew Ng, of course. Lots of recognizable names here. And then it says here are a few of the emerging themes across the 2 days. Agentic AI, of course. Human AI collaboration, physical AI automation, infrastructure as scale, lots of really, important current topics. And now it gets to, these are the guest recommendations for the AI Inside podcast. And a lot of the names that I would hope would make it to this list are here. Brett Taylor, Andrew Ng, Christine Yen, Clara Shi. I mean, this is a great starting point because for me as an independent podcaster / creator, and it even gave me a table. So I can draw this out and I can get more of a sense of what that table says instead of being cramped and confined to the little short area there. And so this gives me a little bit of a summary. This is just incredibly useful for me because I am one person doing a lot of this stuff, and especially research into like who's worth reaching out to and cultivating and bringing onto the podcast. I get so much inbound for the podcast. It's hard to make sense of it. So I could really see using Comet to help me kind of reduce my time there and to make sure that I'm not missing any amazing opportunities. So that is awesome. Yeah.
So list another one or two things that you had it do.
I did have it do some like tab management, of course. I had like a bunch of different tabs of different kind of genres or topics or whatever. And I was like, organize these in a way that makes sense. And it put all these food tabs into a recipe tabs into a food folder, and news tabs into a news folder and stuff like that. So it swapped them all around. What are some of the other things that I did? I mean, it was just, and now I gotta pull up the dang thing because I can't remember because there was a lot. It's about 20 minutes worth of stuff, but I listed it out. Let me see here. Researching and comparing products between multiple tabs. So, if you're, this one I think is really practical, fun, right? Yeah. Because like so often I'm researching things because I'm trying to find the best thing. And what am I using? I'm using a web browser. I've got them all open in their own individual tabs. And then I could just pull out the assistant on the side and say, all right, all the tabs that have to do with headphones, like compare these. And it came back with this like, very specific to what I asked for, a comparison. And then I said, well, what about this aspect? And then it, broke that out into a table and everything. It made comparison shopping really easy.
And the point there too is that it was just tabs open.
It was just tabs open.
Yes,
tabs.
But it knew which tabs were about that,
specific.
And it could react to that. Yes,
totally. And actually in that test, I also had some tabs open that had nothing to do with those.
Exactly.
So I was like, all right, so take a look at the tabs that are comparing cameras. And it knew, okay, these are the 3 that are comparing cameras, and it was able to do it. So I thought that was cool. I was on the a Twitter profile, and I said, I want to know how, what LinkedIn connections I have to this person. And it knew, I didn't use any specifics. I always said this person or, this page or whatever. And it knew this person on Twitter, go over into my LinkedIn profile and check if I'm connected to this person, and if so, by who. And I didn't have to do that. Now, granted, with this agentic stuff, like there is some waiting around. There is some time spent, because you're waiting for it to, it doesn't have immediate API access, in other words. So it's doing it in kind of more or less real time the way you would. But nonetheless, it's really great to not
I
have
tried to get
do
it
some
to
of that
post
stuff.
to Twitter and Blue Sky and stuff, and it couldn't do that.
Oh, I could. I was
could.
able to get it
Oh,
to,
wrong.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I had a Twitter feed. I didn't put it in the video, but I had a Twitter feed open, and I said reply to so and so and tell him blah blah blah, and it actually did, and it also affixed a little thing at the very end of it that said posted through Comet or whatever, to kind of let them know like it was.
I want to use it to just say, add this story to the rundown for AI Inside.
Oh, that would be nice.
And know how to format that.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to do that. I have to imagine. Yeah. Anyways, it gets your mind going.
It's very impressive. It is truly integrated with the browser.
Yep.
And once again, Perplexity ends up ahead of the band. Others will do the same thing, yes, but they're showing the kind of creativity that's impressive.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Hopefully we can get someone from Perplexity on the show.
We'll
keep
try.
throwing out the little hints there to see if it happens. We have definitely reached the end of this episode. I feel a little bad. I kept you a little bit long today, Jeff. Sorry about that. Because I know you have another podcast.
No, I kept you long because I talk too much.
Intelligent Machines coming up later today. If you want more from Jeff over at twit.tv, talking about all things intelligent machines and AI and everything. Or you can go to jeffjarvis.com and find all of Jeff's books, The Web We Weave, Gutenberg Parenthesis, Magazine,
now an audiobook.
Now an audiobook, all sorts of good stuff there. So thank you, Jeff, for being here. Thank you to everybody for watching AIinside.show for everything you need to know about this show. And then, of course, patreon.com/AIinsideshow. There you can become a patron of a number of different levels with different perks, ad-free episodes, access to a Discord community. If you go to the toppiest of perks, that's executive producer, and you get your name scrolling on the screen at this point of the podcast, once I can find it, for our thank yous. Dr. Do, Jeffrey Maricini, WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina, Dante St. James, Bono Day Rick, Jason Knight for Jason Brady, and Anthony Downs. What a wonderful thing that we have such amazing patrons to support us. So thank you for that. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening to this episode of AI Inside. We will see you next week. We've got probably more news to talk about. We always do. We'll see you then. Bye, everybody.